The Rugby 15 season is upon us, and we're going to go ahead and take the time to talk with coaches around the area to find out more about their team. Georgia Southern Rugby went 5-3 last year in this South Independent Rugby Conference. This year for the 2015-2016 season, the players decided to change it up. While normally they have been a player-run organization, they decided to add a head coach. Dr. Chris Brown, a professor of international studies and a very decorated rugby player and coach, came on this season. Chris Brown took the time to be with us today. Chris, thank you so much. First question, what are some of the improvements that you think can be made for this Georgia Southern team for this year?
Well, I think we have a lot of returning players, which is good, and a lot of the returning players in our back line are particularly skilled, and I think that they've benefited from the additional year. I think what we need to do is historically we've relied heavily on very talented players in certain positions, and then made the rest of the team act as role players essentially because it was such a disparity and they were such good players. But what we need to do is we basically have tried to initiate a culture change where we focus more on team first. And so basically we emphasize support instead of, we all know the scenario where you watch the big man break through and everybody kind of takes the time to lay back and watch them go. And you expect them to score, but we are going to follow through and support more. And I think one of the things that we've done as part of that is fitness. But we're working in the off season to become more fit. They work together more than they ever have, in and out of the weight room and in and out of the pitch. So we've tried to instill sort of the camaraderie that historically was reserved for the third half, and bring that into the first and second with these players. So we've been trying to coach them up to think about support first. And that as a player yourself, I'm sure you know that the added advantage of going into a ruck to clear out, to protect your friends, from, losing the ball or in the old days getting cleated, booted. So the emphasis has really been on trying to cultivate a support network on and off the pitch where we work together and we see each other as a team. And so I think it's working. The idea of getting folks to be better because the ones around them are better works so far. But now if we can incorporate those, particularly with our phased attacks and things like that we're making more of an effort to make sure that everybody knows where they're supposed to be when things happen, their distance and their spacing, instead of in relation to each other, not just in relation to the star who has the ball or where the star is on the field. So we're really trying to cultivate that. That's a newer thing. The club has been very focused on being a player-led club for most of its history, and they're very proud of that fact. So that as a coach, it takes a little bit of a subtle hand sometimes, so that you don't get players to react the wrong way. And I think one of the things about the USA Rugby coaching model is that it's extremely supportive of player development, more so than many of the other sports that I've had the benefit of coaching, is that it really does emphasize player-led development, and so it fits with our way of doing things. So I think, in short, I think we had a solid core. I think we have a good number of returning players. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get those players then to work better together, and instead of seeing themselves as role players. And ideally, I think what we would love to have, and I'm sure every rugby player would love to have this, and anyone who's ever played flanker usually smiles at this, is to have 15 flankers on the pitch, with better passing. 15 flankers with better passing and less discipline to pick and go all the time.
Now, who do you feel are some of the veterans that you believe can be an impact on this team on and off the field?
Well, I think the one guy who stands out right away, and I'll have to bridge this with I'm a new coach for a club that has historically been player-led. And so even though they've had coaches on the roster, most of the coaches have either been players or USA Rugby hasn't been as particular in the past. So coming into a situation where you have a lot of guys who are capable of playing, especially with the returning numbers that we have, but maybe have been playing somewhat out of position, because there was someone better in their spot. They were good enough athletically to be on the pitch, but they probably needed to be somewhere else to better use them. And I think we've decided, the officers and myself have sort of decided to reevaluate everyone's position, not in a means of getting rid of folks, but giving opportunity for a lot of the guys who sort of are coming up now. But I would say Chandler Lane has really taken a lead on a lot of these initiatives, and so he's in a position to scrum half, is in a position to sort of quarterback, and he's a very vocal. He's it's funny, he's a bit he seems a bit bookish, I suppose. But he definitely has a head for the game, and he's got the right attitude. And he's actually somewhat of a presence now. Is one of the things that we tried to get him to be, was to be more vocal, especially if we're coordinating the teams. So we're trying to get him to quarterback things a little bit more. But he's really taking the lead on a lot of stuff. So there's high hopes for him. Some of the other folks, we're sort of in the middle of I think some of our more prominent forward players found themselves in a bit of an eligibility question, asking for fifth and sixth years and stuff like that. And so we're sort of trying to weigh that out right now. So between being a new coach, and I don't have specific positions that I can say that these folks will go for sure, because we've decided to sort of reevaluate that. Secondly, we're sort of figuring out some of our eligibility questions right now. And again, this is all part of the process of being the new guy coming in. You have these guys, and you know how it is. You have these guys, you have rosters, and first day of practice, there's 50 guys out there, and then 2 weeks in, you're sort of like, lets everybody call for numbers, like, hey, what happened to that guy? What happened to the skinny guy, who came last week, who wore the basketball shorts? Does anybody know where he's at? And so that's pretty typical in a college level, I think. So I think the short answer is a lot of that has to be still to be determined. But I can give you Chandler Lane as sort of the guy who's sort of helping to sort that out from the player side.
Last question, Coach. When people talk about Georgia Southern Rugby, what do you want them to know? What do you want them to get out of it whenever they interact with you, whether they're seeing or playing against you guys?
I think the rugby is one of the weirdest sort of communities. It occurred to me one day, I heard the exhaust in the background there. It occurred to me one day there was motorcycle guys driving down the street, and they were in one of their lines, and they're doing their thing, and the hand signals and stuff, and the leathers and everything else, and it's not my thing. And I was like, what a weird subculture. I thought to myself, like, the motorcycle people. That's a weird thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm part of a weird subculture. I play rugby. And so I think it's a camaraderie. This game is a bond. I mean, you and I we don't know each other at all, but we're both in it for the game. We would play against each other, we would play with each other, and we go at the bar afterwards and we have beers and we talk about how we used to be much stronger. We used to be much faster, and we tell these stories. And when we see each other again, there's a bond that we have. And I think one of the biggest things for me at University of Florida when I played is that we maintain that connection. Playing for University of Florida was like playing for a fraternity. We used to think about it in a blue collar fraternity. We used to think about it. It was a brotherhood. We looked out for each other. And I think what I want to see is I want to see that spirit of sportsmanship among our players, not just with the other team as part of the rules of rugby and the culture of rugby, but also sort of with each other. I want to see them support each other. I want to see them feel like they're part of a community, that they're part of a brotherhood. So Georgia Southern Rugby should be a very welcoming environment for anybody who wants to play, but it should also be an opportunity for players to get what they want out of the group, and in terms of the social, and in terms of on and off the pitch, in terms of that bonding time. So I think they should think about it as a good opportunity. It should be a fun opportunity, but it should really be about that sort of that weird subculture that we have a part of, to build an appreciation for that game. And I think you build that by being of relatively good character. I mean, we all have our our things we've done, that we don't talk about on interviews, but what we, you know, we the thing that the reason why you're sitting in the chair right now asking me questions about rugby and I'm sitting here talking about rugby is the same. That's what I want them to get out of it. I want Georgia Southern to give them the same thing that rugby has given to me over the years. Is that's sort of the reason why we still talk about it. Gain an appreciation for the game itself. So Georgia Southern rugby works well because Georgia Southern is about tradition, you know, and they definitely feel a sense of pride in being from here. And I to parlay that into rugby as being it. So rugby has its own traditions, and if we can merge those two things, so I want everybody to know that when Georgia Southern beats them, that they got beat by the nicest bunch of guys they possibly could get beat by. You know, that a band of brothers, if you will, to be cliched. So that's what I'd like to see. So even in a bad day, you know, you lose together, right?
Thank you so much for your time, Coach. Best of luck to you guys this season.
No problem, no problem. Like I said, I anything to promote the game, and I really appreciate what you're doing to promote the game and you know do what you love. All right, take care, man. Thank you.
And got everyone else, this is Gift Time at Bailey with Gift Time Rugby Network. Cheers.